From Beneil Dariush dubbing the highlight the hungrier fighter, to Ariel Helwani revealing that the Diamond's nervous for the fight, here are pros picking their favorite between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. That's right, Big Benny is willing to bet it all on the highlight for his hunger. Speaking to Schmo on his YouTube channel, Dariush made it clear that even though Dustin Poirier is a dog and knows how to fight, he's in a weird spot right now. It's like he wants to go for the belt, but kinda doesn't. Understandably so. It takes a certain level of dedication and time away from your family to train for that level of fight. Frankly, since the Conor fight, we have yet to see that level of hunger from Poirier. And having already won their previous encounter at UFC on Fox 29, it's likely that the Diamond will be a little loose on Gaethje with nothing to prove. And on the other hand, there is Justin Gaethje, a man who really means business. He's in a spot in his career where it's all or nothing. Speaking to MMA Fighting, he mentioned how he wishes to retire by 37, with 2 to 3 years left in him, and you bet he wants to make them count. Even before the match was made official, he was talking about how he needs to fight Dustin in August, September, or October to put him in the perfect timeline for the title. But in that interview, Beneil said something particular about Gaethje that will play a bigger role in the fight. Beneil told Schmo that Justin is a scary man, and that's hard to argue with. As Joe Rogan said, Gaethje is a straight-up monster. Needless to say, MMA is a violent sport, and Gaethje, without a doubt, stands out as the most violent athlete competing in it, which is quite a feat. He attacks his opponents like a rabid dog. Rogan puts it best: there is a reckless abandon to his calculated wildness. His brutal knockout of Edson Barboza is a highlight that sums him up. Speaking to TMZ Sports, Justin literally admitted that he does not fear death, which is also why he doesn't buy motorcycles. And certainly his high-speed clash with Poirier will be one he'll be willing to put his life on the line for. Sure, he may know he's getting on in years, but when it's game time, baby. Featherweight Brian Ortega had a pretty poetic way to describe him in a nutshell. There are fighters and there are warriors. And Gaethje right there is a warrior. Jalen the Tarantula Turner had some pretty constructive insight. He has his money on Gaethje solely for his performance against the Ataman, Rafael Fiziev. Before we proceed, let me just establish that here, Justin was going up against one of the most vicious strikers in all of the UFC. And at UFC 286, Justin Gaethje made him his personal punching bag. Fiziev went into the fight saying he wanted to eat Justin's heart. Who knew that he'd end up losing an eye? Seriously, by the end of the fight, the Russian looked like he was hit with a baseball bat. That's what Justin does to you. Fiziev has a background in Muay Thai and kickboxing, so you know he can take a punch. But going up against Gaethje, he could barely keep up. While the highlight has entire London on their feet and chanting his name like it was a football game, he was thinking, meh. That's right. At the post-fight interview with Megan O'Leary, Gaethje said he was bored in that fight. He looked as though he could go another 5 rounds, no problem. Jalen has a point. Justin is only gonna look sharper coming into UFC 291, coming fresh off his bout against Fiziev. On the other hand, Poirier hasn't stepped into the octagon since November of 2022. And ring rust isn't something you want to have, especially against Justin Gaethje. But okay, maybe we're being a little too hard on Dustin. And maybe it's all recency bias. Lightweight Ragin Ally Quinta told Schmo how he thinks the Diamond is still too seasoned for Gaethje. Put some respect on his name. Let's not forget the legends Dustin has demolished throughout his career. This is the man who almost broke Max Holloway's arm. He's the man who humbled the notorious Conor McGregor twice. And why, yes, let's not forget, this is also the man who had his hand raised against the highlight. Dustin is probably the only fighter that truly gets what Gaethje is all about. In an interview before the fight, Poirier blatantly said he knew what kind of fighter he needed to be in order to get the W. He was ready to bleed. In the finishing sequence of the fight, Gaethje tried to use Dustin's signature leg kicks on him. That's when the Diamond decided to return the favor and take Gaethje out in his own game. With menacing rights and lefts, Poirier had Gaethje compromised. Let the record show, Justin is probably the only man to outbox Justin in an all-out slugfest. You know what they say, diamonds are made under intense pressure. And coming out of the Gaethje fight, Dustin was a different fighter. He TKO'd UFC legend Eddie Alvarez in his next fight, got the W against Max Holloway, dismantled Conor McGregor back-to-back, and made Michael Chandler give up at UFC 269. John Anik said it best, "Dustin doesn't need another title shot to prove himself. He proved he was the true BMF against Gaethje the first time. Only now he needs to do it for the belt." Even UFC legend Eddie Alvarez thinks it's all on the Diamond's mentality. Now, here is a fighter who really knows what he's talking about. The veteran knows what Dustin is capable of in the octagon, having faced him on 2 occasions in his career. The silent assassin pointed out that Dustin peaked in his fight against Conor. Even though he couldn't grab the gold against Charles Oliveira, the millions he racked up against McGregor have him all set for his retirement. According to the Sports Daily, Poirier made $1 million just to show up at the fight, with an additional $21,000 fight week incentive pay. Eddie is concerned for Poirier's desire, and that kind of money can get in the way of your desire to put in the work. Alvarez also points out how it isn't raining diamonds yet for Justin Gaethje. He thinks his hunger to get a taste of that clout will be a deciding factor in the match. I mean, Gaethje does only have 2 years left to set himself up for retirement. Schmo tried to narrow down the American Knuckle Star's prediction, asking him who was the most skilled of the two, and Eddie just had to go with Poirier. Compared to Justin Gaethje, Dustin is the more calculated fighter. He heads into the fight with a game plan rather than just winging it. We saw this play out in his second bout with Conor. His coaches told Dustin to go into the fight with a mission: calf kicks, and some more calf kicks. The result? A limp Irishman. Even Conor's rival, Khabib Nurmagomedov, wasn't safe. The man came oh so close to ending the Dagestani's undefeated streak, choking him out in front of his father. See a pattern? Instead of forcing his own style on other fighters, he heads into their domain and rips them apart. But I still wouldn't recommend you putting your money on Poirier just yet. What if I told you the Diamond himself is nervous about this fight? After Gaethje mauled Fiziev, Dustin was asked his thoughts on a potential rerun with Justin Gaethje. He went candid with Amy Kaplan, a fan-sided MMA, saying he feeds off his nervousness. And Gaethje's a name that puts him on high alert. That doesn't sound pretty confident of a man who's already won against his next opponent. Let me remind you, Dustin walked alone into his fight with Justin that night, but had to be carried into the locker room screaming that man's got an iron chin. Poirier said he knew he'd have to leave a piece of himself in the octagon that night. And with the W, he also took home massive respect for the highlight. Do you think Dustin's kicks versus Conor's were vicious? Get this, Gaethje has the Diamond venting on podcasts about how he tore his quad. On the American Top Team's Punching In, Poirier was asked who had the most venomous kicks of all his opponents. And almost instinctively, Poirier replied, Gaethje. He pointed out the most dangerous thing about the highlight, that he does not care if he hurts himself in the pursuit of inflicting pain on his opponents. He'll blast you with kicks if it means you lose one. Speaking to Ariel Helwani on the rematch, Dustin even highlighted how greatly Gaethje has improved on the jab and footwork. That being said, Poirier is set to bring out the matador in him. With that being said, through all the predictions, Dustin has called it in for the fans. Get ready for the sequel to the fight of the century. So, from Ariel Helwani revealing that the Diamond's nervous for the fight, to Beneil Dariush dubbing Gaethje the hungrier fighter, those were pros picking their favorite between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje.